Hello, hi everyone. I think I'm online. My name is Carolina Guimarães, and I'm speaking here from Brazil, São Paulo. I'm speaking on behalf of the Sustainable Cities Program, and today I have the pleasure to present a little bit of what we do and also as some of the reflections what has been this last year as we've been selected last year by the Paris Peace Forum as one of the 10 organizations that support peace in the world. So it was a really great pleasure to be able to exchange throughout this year with mentors. Of course, has been a very different year from normal years, but I think that our work has been very important also to support especially the most vulnerable people in cities in Brazil. So the presentation name is Sustainable Cities Program, Strengthening Democracy Through the Municipalization of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals in Brazil. So basically, these are a few pictures of us. This is myself and my director that were able to be present last year at the Paris Peace Forum. Of course, this is a completely different format, but we are happy to be here also and to later exchange and answer your questions. So one of the pictures is us in our booth. Explaining about our program. The other one is outside of the venue, and then the other one was during the prize ceremony. Basically, why we focus in cities, I think that's always important, and I think that this agenda of cities and sustainable cities has been very important and relevant, especially during this year, where mayors and governors became even more important, especially sometimes when they had antagonist views with their own national leaders and presidents, especially to be able to tackle such challenges as we're facing. So here is some pictures of the global context we face. So we face inequality, environmental challenges, and now the pandemic. It's another crisis, a sanitary crisis. We have economic and environmental and now a sanitary crisis. Here, I think it's important just to point about Brazil. I think Brazil is very well known for its culture. I think that people have different images of Brazil. When you talk about it, sometimes soccer, sometimes colors, sometimes carnival. But I think it's also important to mention that Brazil has a very large economy. So we are in the 9th biggest GDP, as we are a big country. We're 200 million people. But unfortunately, we are also one of the most unequal countries. We're not proud of this, but this is a very problematic root cause of many of our problems. So we really need to tackle that. And this is a great challenge we have. So here our focus is on cities. This is Ban Ki-moon, the previous Secretary General of the UN, and mentioning that climate change will be won or lost in cities. And I think that many other battles will also be won and lost in cities, because in the end, it's the territory where people live. And I think it's important to say also that we live in a federal country, so municipalities do have a lot of power, and a lot of public policies are created and done at the local level. So it's really important also that to keep that in mind, because as I'll mention later on, it's important because we're talking here about the municipalization of the SDGs. So I think this opens the picture for us to talk a little bit about this global agenda. I think it's really important for us to have this global agenda, so we know that we are in the same planet and there's no planet B, and we all have to work towards the same goal. But at the same time, we need to be specific about local context, and each local context is very different. So this articulation between the micro and the macro, the global and the local, is very important. And that's why in the Sustainable Cities Program, we look at agendas that are overarching, that we're all working together, but also bringing them to the local context. So that happens with the 2030 agenda, the Paris Agreement, and the New Urban Agenda. all these agendas are important frameworks for our work at the program, at the Sustainable Cities Program. We work through a complete cycle. So the cycle goes from the production of knowledge to the stimulation of the participation, to the creation of public policies, to the monitoring and evaluation of what's happening, and again, to the knowledge production. So I'm going to go through some phases here, and I'm going to show our work. So here in the knowledge creation is where we municipalize the SDGs. Basically, we have a platform with indicators and goals, right? So you have the objectives, the goals, and the indicators. And the idea is that cities commit to the sustainable agenda, and cities commit through affiliation letter from the mayor once he takes over or when he's doing his campaign. So it's very important right now that we are doing a lot of campaign because we have municipal elections in all the municipalities in Brazil, and we're talking about 5,570 municipalities in Brazil, and it's happening this Sunday. So we have been mobilizing the last month to get candidates who are running for office as mayors to sign this letter to commit to this agenda. And once they commit to these agendas, they commit to monitor their activities at the cities. And they do that through indicators. So we have 12 axes, and this 12 axes has indicators, and these indicators dialogue with the local, with the sustainable development goals. So you put in practice as actions, and you're articulating your local agenda with this global agenda. So the idea is that we're all working towards the same goal, and also giving importance to the local action. So the platform offers a lot of tools. So you're talking about indicators, but you're talking about other types of practices, guides, maps, surveys. So it's quite important. And we have different modules. So these modules are very interesting. I'll just give one quick example because I won't be able to further explain here, but I'm happy to explain or after answer any question. But for example, we have now a GIS tool where you look not only at the indicators at the local level, but you can also look at differences, intra-municipal differences, with this GIS tool. So you are able to georeference some indicators that's really interesting for you to understand, well, what's happening in this part of the city, what's happening in that part of the city. This is very important, especially for cities that are very different. It can even be in big cities like São Paulo, where you have huge discrepancies in the same city between neighborhoods. Or you can also, in smaller cities that don't have the technical capacity or tools to do that, and can take advantage of this tool to be able to understand what's the different problems happening in the different cities, so that they can tackle with infrastructure or specific actions. So it's very interesting and important for the cities to always look at this platform as a hub of knowledge and a hub of helping them to put in practice this sustainable agenda in social, economic, and environmental fronts. So this is So we talk here about inequality, and as I mentioned, inequality is a huge cross-cutting problem for us. So we do some inequality maps, and the idea of these maps is to point directions. So water indicators are very unequal, and how does that compare to average national averages, and what we can do about them? So it's really interesting to strengthen this culture of creating public policies based on indicators and based on data, and that's very important to us. Here we also did this work during the pandemic to show how inequality had negative impact on the cases and then deaths of the pandemic. I think it's important to say that while we are all facing the pandemic, people were in different boats. Now, it's kind of an analogy to say that the boats of people were different. So some people were, facing the pandemic without having formal jobs, without having formal housing, so we're living in formal settlements, without access to water, and of course that had different impact. So we made sure to put that to debate, to show how inequality is always a problem, especially when we have crisis. And we can anticipate this and then work on better public policies, so then we don't have always the same vulnerable people suffering the impacts. So here is a bunch of maps that we show that. So we show that related to work, with poverty in general, with the IT, with the special beds in hospitals, and then access to water. And so, of course, it's in Portuguese. Unfortunately, we didn't translate it all, but we can talk about it later too. Here is another part of the cycle of our mobilization of public administration. So ensuring that public administration puts together a plan, and then we monitor that plan throughout the 4 years. It's 4-year terms here. So civil society knows what the politician is doing. There's also now this discrepancy between the campaign and what they actually execute, and that's a law that we supported passing in São Paulo and in other 6 municipalities, which is called the Goals Plan. So right now we had 214 cities committed to this Sustainable Cities program, with this agenda, with these tools, with this mentality. And we are renovating these commitments during this election, because some are going to get reelected, some not. In Brazil, you can only get reelected for 2 terms. And we're going to see the results by the end of December. There's some cities that have second rounds of voting. And we're going to see, and we're going to continue to strengthen our work to get them committed, and then also further the monitoring and putting in practice transparency and more democratic tools, and also tools to support them with this complex and integrated urban planning. So here is an exercise of monitoring of the goal plans that I mentioned with civil society. Here's a bunch of our partners, and it's very important that we partner up with other organizations, civil society organizations. This is also other partners. Some of you guys will know, others won't, because it's very national related, but it's very interesting because we have different types of partners, especially also partners that involve city mayors and then associations of municipalities. That is very important to our work. Here is the goal plan law that we mentioned that we passed, and we support the construction of public policy with all the data and with all the work we help to build. So it's very interesting to see our action, for example, in São Paulo, working with the public policy to put together the early childhood plan, climate change plan, the municipal education plan. So we have a bunch of work that we're very proud to support, and to constantly be in dialogue with the public authorities and officials, to be able to support this work with participation, of course. So here's the monitoring of the goals in São Paulo, and we do through the different 4-year terms. So it's interesting to compare and to see where we're going. So we have benchmarks. Here is the dashboard also of how the cities are doing. So are they really putting their data where they're supposed to? Because we have this platform, and then they have all these different indicators that they should report. Are they doing that? Are they advancing or not? How can we support them? So we do this tracking and monitoring. And then here's a conference, a big conference we put together last year with the World Bank, and it was very interesting in terms of dialogues and then what came out of it. We also have an award, and last year our award was to programs and actions that reduce the inequality, and our award is also, it's very important. We inform, engage, and then recognize. And I think that this initiative is always very important to continue to support cities to do a better and better job. Here are some projects that were involved. So I just wanted to quickly, I don't know how much time I have left. I lost a little bit of track of time, and I can speak quite fast sometimes. But I wanted to end by saying that it was very interesting to be part of the Scale Up Committee. So it's the selected group of 10 organizations that that support peace in the world, as I mentioned, and we were selected by the Paris Peace Forum, and we had some opportunities throughout the year. We had a mentor, and then we were continuing dialoguing about how can we scale. Right, I think it's important. We were in 216 cities, and we wanted to amplify our impact. And I think is also a concern of the Paris Peace Forum of like having these great initiatives and how can they scale and how can we support more peace. And I think that is very interesting because when we talk about peace, we're not just talking. I think some people think about peace in some kind of way, very specific, but I think it's about putting together, constructing bridges, fomenting dialogue, promoting good best practices, inspiring others. So I think there's many ways to think about peace in a hard and in a soft concept, a soft way. So the opportunities that we had participating throughout this year in the Scale Up Committee were creating this wider network and having doors open for us, being the academic and the private or the foundation sector. Also being able to exchange best practices. And we exchanged, for example, with someone from South Africa. It was very interesting. It was about service implementation there. And we were like, oh, interesting. And especially with a focus in informal settlements. And so it was very, very interesting. Exchange and learn, I think, is also very important for us to have this opportunity to know what's going on in other places and then also beyond our borders. And I think that the Paris Peace Forum does that in a very good way, thinking that we are in one planet together and we need to work through cooperation and multilateralism to be able to achieve these bigger goals. And we're talking about inequality as a whole, we're talking about climate change, and we're talking about democracy also. And also we had the opportunity to take over like the communication, the social media of the Paris Peace Forum. That was very interesting. I think the challenges, and there might be a commonality with others, but is that the context is very specific. Of course, for Brazil, and I think that is different for each country and every project. We had municipal elections, and that was very like a focus of this year. And of course, we combined that as an opportunity, but also as a challenge. And of course, the pandemic, I think that everyone had to rethink their work. So the future opportunities, I think, is to strengthen and match our regional bloc. I think that last year we didn't have that many people from Latin America. This year we increased, and I think that we have to think of strengthening that bloc as like a voice in the Paris Peace Forum, match solutions. So think about like other solutions that are happening in other places to be able to do this bilateral more exchanges. Match supporters also, I think it's important in terms of funding and financing, and continue to scale up solutions. So here I have like a last kind of challenging but also encouraging picture saying that there are answers. There's the simple but wrong way and the complex but right way. And we see many less people, like not very many people going to the complex but right way direction. And I think that's the challenge that we're facing. We cannot look for band-aid solutions, but we really need to look at the root causes, and one root cause is inequality, and that's our biggest challenge, and that's what we're trying to do, be it with the municipalization of the SDGs to promote democracy, but also in various different initiatives that we're doing. So I'm open for questions. I think Do you work with similar initiatives in other countries, with other cities around the world? Thank you for your question. Right now, we do have partner organizations in some other countries like Uruguay, Argentina, but our focus is mainly in Brazil. We would like very much to think about inequality with different countries. I don't know if you have been accompanying the politics in Latin America, but inequality has been a huge issue in Chile and has taken people to the streets, and they're going through a process where they're going to rethink their constitution because it was created during Pinochet, during dictatorship. So I think there's a huge potential for, that's why I mentioned the original block, to talk about inequality and what lessons can we learn from different countries and different cities, because it is a problem. And this inequality in Brazil, when you compare inequality, for example, in Asia or inequality in Africa, the inequality in Brazil and in many countries in Latin America creates violence, and it can be very violent in big cities with huge inequality. So I think, unfortunately, we have this commonality, and I think that's also a great common ground for exchange. And thank you for your question. That means that you're interested and think about other cities, but we can, of course, expand, and we're happy to exchange with others. I don't know if there are other questions, or should I speak a little bit more about the program? Marina? How do you ensure that mayors will meet their commitments after signing it? That's a great question, and that's super hard. It's one of our biggest challenges that they sign, and then afterwards, like, we don't see them like inputting their information at the page, because each city has their own page where they input their information, and of course that's after public for people to see. We give them incentives, and we're really thinking about creating disincentives. So the incentives for them to put their information is that they're rewarded, they participate, we invite them for international meetings, they're part of this network, and different opportunities. We also work with civil society at the local level to be able to have partners at the local level asking, like doing advocacy work and making sure that they're asking their own mayor and their own municipality to be more transparent, be committed to the sustainable agenda. But of course, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's really hard to have a clear-cut answer, because you know how it is with politics. But we are really thinking, we have been really thinking about that challenge and reassessing what we're going to do with this new cities that are coming in for this new term, right? So we're going to start a new term in 2021 for 4 years. So of really taking them from the platform, so they can't use the logo, or they can't use, they can't say that they are part of this network. And I think that more and more civil society is asking and requesting. So I think it's both ways. It's like making sure that we strengthen civil society advocacy tools, and then also having a disincentive for them not to participate. But it's a great question. I think we also are bringing other tools that are making more and more interesting for them to engage. So, for example, we are doing the Sustainable Cities Index. So it's really interesting. We're doing for more cities than we have in our platform, and that way we're going to also ask more cities to join. And this index is an index of all cities in the world, and there also this voluntary report happening at the local level. So we're also innovating and bringing new tools. How has the COVID crisis affected the project? Have you found environmental issues to have been set aside during the pandemic? So how has the COVID crisis affected the project? So this year is elections year, and normally the elections is in October, and we postponed it 1 month to November. There were talks in the beginning of the year that the election should be in the next year, and we should postpone it. And we made sure that we didn't postpone because we thought it was very important to have 4-year terms, to have this refresh in the democracy is an important commitment to society. So we made sure we campaign for with other organizations. We also did a lot of work to support, for example, a minimum stipend wage for special informal workers, and then especially minimum wage workers. So we had to do a lot of activities specifically for COVID. And of course, the mobilization for elections had to change. We're doing all online, and that's a huge challenge doing all online. And as you can imagine, there's so many events happening online. There was this competition for events, for lives, and all these challenges. So I think it was a huge problem. And how have you found environmental issues you have set aside during the pandemic? I don't know if I understood completely your question, but what I understand is that how, like, during COVID, the environment was kind of like underestimated and was set aside because we had to look at the pandemic. Well, I think that happened, yes, because that was basically the main challenge. I'm thinking about what, for example, we had problems in before the pandemic with, for example, heavy rains, and then we always the most vulnerable also get flood. In the most vulnerable places get floods and things like that. So a lot of environmental challenges, because our rainy season was in March, happened before the pandemic, and I think that there was, I don't know if, like, during the pandemic, I think a lot of people like really miss the green spaces, and that was kind of like an awareness of their importance. And because of the economy, the malls were open before parks here, and that was also like created a big debate. So I think I pinpointed a little bit of what you asked. Maybe I can further elaborate later. I don't know if my time is up. They gave me 5 minutes, and I'm not doing such a good time tracking the time, but I think that I think a lot of things came to awareness during this time, and we're really hoping that awareness will further be put to action during this election. So people are going to think about like the importance of things that they felt or that was not present during this time of the pandemic, and they're going to look at the plans and the promises that the different mayors are doing and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to vote for this guy or this woman because they're promising something that I know it's important. So we are really hoping that happens, because I think that there's a lot of awareness creating in terms of philanthropy, in terms of different actions that I think we should put in place right now. And the election is a great opportunity. So that's what we're hoping for. Thank you very much all for being here for the dialogue, and I really appreciate it. And please be in contact.